The latest breaking update from Hong Kong, it's getting serious, it's getting dangerous, and this may be breaking down into full-blown rebellion. Hong Kong is not China, but China does want Hong Kong. For the longest time, Hong Kong was a British colony. And there's like a bunch of rules and a bunch of things happening. I can't get into the full details because I'm not an expert, but China is slowly taking more control. This is resulting in a pushback because you can imagine communist China versus, liberal democracy Hong Kong. The latest news. A 14-year-old was shot. They're now in serious condition. In response to this shooting, protesters beat the crap out of the cop and torched him with a Molotov cocktail. So I'm going to show just a quick still of this video, but you've been warned for those that are watching. You're going to see a person in flames. So let me back up here, and there it is. So as this cop was being beaten, people start running away, and someone chucks a Molotov, and the flames engulf him. And there he is. There's his leg. That's his head. He stands up. He runs out of the fire, pats the fire out. He's probably been burned. People don't realize that, you see these prank videos where someone will take hairspray and a lighter and they'll do it really quick to their friend, and the friend gets first degree. I don't know what degree the burns are, but like the first layer of their skin gets singed off and their hair gets burned off, and everyone doesn't realize that could leave permanent scars and seriously cause damage. So yeah, this is serious. This is a dude being hit by a Molotov. So they say, Hong Kong protesters, this is from Jake Hanrahan, Hong Kong protesters beat a police officer, set him on fire, then tried to steal his sidearm after he shot a 14-year-old protester in the leg with another live round. Again, another young protester has been shot with a live round. So here's the big breaking news. That boy is in serious condition after being shot. I believe a teenager had been struck by a bullet after an 18-year-old became the first protester to be hit by a live round on Tuesday. I believe this is the story. They don't know. This person's saying he doesn't know if it's a live round, but it appears to be. So for those that haven't been following, over the past few days, there have been several updates in this regard. There was some protesters were fighting with cops. A cop pulled out his gun and put a bullet in the chest of this young man. Apparently in serious condition, not life-threatening, and he's going to be okay. I'm not sure. But now I believe it's only been, like a day or two later. The first thing we saw a while ago was a warning shot. And people started getting worried that warning shots mean the real ones are coming soon. And now we have two people. So there's serious concerns. Let me read the story from Sky News. A 14-year-old boy is in a serious condition after being shot in the leg during protests in Hong Kong, according to Sky sources. It is unclear whether the teenager was shot with a live round or a rubber bullet, and whether it was fired by the police or someone else. Many reports are saying it was live. I'm adding that, by the way. The boy who was shot in the left thigh has been transferred from Puk Oi Hospital to Tuen Mun Hospital. It comes after a teenager became the first person to be shot with a live round since the protest started in April. Sang Chi-Kin, 18, was shot in the shoulder on Tuesday, was later charged with rioting. So it looked like he was getting shot in the chest. It must have went to his shoulder. They say the offense carries a penalty of up to 10 years in jail. He was shot as around 100,000 people took part in widespread rallies on China's National Day as the Communist Party marked its 70th anniversary, despite a Hong Kong police ban. The 14-year-old boy was shot before a ban on protesters wearing masks came into force in the country. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced the use of emergency powers, which haven't been invoked for more than 50 years, after months of violent protests. Ms. Lam said Hong Kong faced extensive and very serious danger, but stressed it was not under a state of emergency. Anyone breaking the mask ban could be jailed for a year or fined. It came into force at midnight on Saturday, the 5th of October in the territory, which is 7 hours ahead in the UK, which matters little to us. But here's the really big story. Hong Kong is imposing a face mask ban in flaming protesters. The Daily Beast reports, demonstrators who take pains to make sure they can't be identified defied the edict in the hours after it was announced. Now, here's what's interesting. The parallels between this and the US are so profound. The big difference is the tribe. In this instance, Hong Kong, which is for a long time sovereign, it was a colony of the UK, but they're not part of China, are now slowly being overtaken by China. They're resisting. China is ruled by the Communist Party, which currently puts Muslims in camps. They call them re-education camps. Let's call them concentration camps, where they go up and round up Muslims and lock them up. China is doing very atrocious things. The left would argue the U.S. is putting undocumented citizens in camps. But they're not citizens. The government isn't going and rounding up its own citizens. They're rounding up people who are in the country illegally. The left would argue that's irrelevant, yada, yada. The point is, the parallels are really fascinating when you look at Antifa. Antifa in Washington, D.C., for instance, on January 20th, several hundred, 270 maybe, were arrested. I was among those arrested, but I was released without charge very, very quickly. The left doesn't like it when I say that. They're like, no, Tim, you weren't arrested. I literally was. I was told 3 times I was, and based on the legal definition of arrest, I was arrested without being processed. I was released. That's a normal thing. It happens. So I was not detained. I was not free to go. I was held for more than an hour. And then the police, I navigated my way out with my press credentials, and they let out several journalists. But in D.C., these Antifa people wear masks. There are numerous laws saying you can't wear masks in protests for certain reasons. It's because the protesters and the rioters in the U.S. put on all black, and they do this so that you can't identify them when they break the law. And the government tried charging them with conspiracy because they wore these clothes. I think that's a dangerous precedent. You can't do that. Look, man, if somebody's going to wear a hoodie, you can't blame everybody who wears hoodies. You just can't work that way. So they've actually imposed this face mask ban. But here's the big question, I guess, in what's going on with Hong Kong. The police have now shot 2 people. At what point do the people have a right to put on masks, fight back, torch things, and riot? It really is a big challenge, I gotta say. I got to admit. There are a lot of circumstances where you see Antifa making arbitrary claims and just trying to destroy a system that's, not that bad, right? So there are a lot of things that are bad about the U.S., but the U.S. is pretty free. We have a constitution. We have protections of our rights. We don't have authoritarian communists trying to, come into our country and take over. And so some could argue that Hong Kong being separate from China, this is China, preparing an invasion of Hong Kong. But for the time being, Hong Kong is fighting with its own police force. So I ask you, take this story, contrast it with what we've seen in the U.S., and I mean this sincerely. Define for me that line. What is it? Is it tribe? Is it because in the U.S. it's capitalist, constitutionalists who use state force and police power to enforce these laws? Is it because China is communist and is rounding up Muslims in camps? You'll see a lot of people is it majority? Is it because so many people in Hong Kong agree? What if 50% of the people in the U.S. protested making a demand? Would we then have to agree and say, yes, stand down? That's the will of the people. But we're not a direct democracy. We're a constitutional republic, which means people elect representatives, and we have an electoral system and Congress and things like this. We have multiple branches. Why, when you're gonna see people, actually, let me rewind. When the Hong Kong people started waving the American flag and singing the national anthem and calling for free speech and things like that, many people on the left started accusing them of being far right. Many people on the left started defending communist China, saying these people are attacking cops. And it was the weirdest thing for me to see. People on the right supporting the protesters and people on the left supporting the police. Because in the US, it's inverted. It makes me feel like, for the most part, all that really matters is your core ideology. If you're a communist, then people will defend your right to put on a mask and throw a Molotov cocktail and attack that cop. If you're a capitalist, then people on the left will defend your right to attack the cop, right? So it's tough. The way I see it is, it's not so, easily defined as ideology. It's just if you're for free speech and protecting the rights of the people, then I agree with you on pushing back on unjust laws, no matter what your political position is. The left would argue that that's exactly what Antifa is doing. Communism is the ultimate fight for the people. But then we can look at the history of communism, and we can see all the people who have been killed under it. So I disagree. And there's the impasse. The communists will say, that wasn't real communism, and you're wrong. The right will say, oh, please don't try me. Every time communism has been tried, it's failed. I happen to agree that, for whatever reason, every time they try to make communism happen, they have to go around killing people. And it may be because the only way to institute societal homogeny is to kill those who disagree. It's the plot from Captain America, Winter Soldier, when the big ships are going to wipe everybody out to make conformity. So for me, it's clear cut. I understand why the Hong Kong protesters are fighting. I do. I disagree with them beating people they think are cops. I disagree with the destruction and the violence. But here we are. Here we are with cops shooting people. Now what? What now? I don't know. I really don't. I really don't. Because at a certain point, everything breaks down. How long can I criticize them for smashing windows when it comes to the police shooting somebody? Going back to Occupy Wall Street, there was a guy named Scott Olson, was standing still, and a cop in Oakland shot, I think it was a tear gas canister, hit him in the head and gave him a traumatic brain injury. Cannot support that. that, you know, and then the crazy thing about it was when other protesters tried to pull him out, a cop threw a flashbang grenade. It wasn't necessarily a flashbang. It was I forgot what they're called. Flashbangs are bigger, louder, but it was a disruption. I forgot what they're called. It was like a flashbang, but it's weaker. So the point is, you know, back then it was clear cut. That cop shot that young man in San Francisco in the head. We can all denounce that and call it out. And that's why many people protested. Today, Antifa shows up and beats up civilians. And there's a big difference, right? When Antifa is attacking regular people, torching the limo owned by a migrant, we can clearly call that out as being wrong. To me, that's where the line is. But at the end, we just see people in masks wanting to protect their identity. We see Antifa make a similar argument. These people in these protests have beaten, you know, seemingly random people. I don't know, man. I really don't. But let me just say, at the very least, it seems like with these 2 live rounds, you know, it's breaking down into full-blown rebellion. It's not going to be a protest anymore. Something else. Stick around. Next segment will be tomorrow at 10 a.m., podcast 6:30 p.m., and I'll see you all next time.